For today's mini workout, we're going to try to find the neutral alignment of our pelvis. So in our Pilates classes, we talk about neutral pelvis a lot and then have another position called an imprint, which I'll also cover. But first, let's just talk about your neutral. A neutral pelvis sets the foundation of your posture to be optimal. So it is the position that preserves the natural forward curvature of your lower back. So if you're standing, it allows you to be shock absorbent against the force of gravity as you're moving. Now, when you're sitting up, the base is your sits bones. So we always talk about sitting up on them. But when you're laying on your back, because we're not in a regular relationship with gravity, we have to kind of sense what neutral is in relationship to the ribs and the head. So I'm going to have you put your fingertips on your pubic bone and the heels of your hands on your hip bones. So I'm making a triangle on the top of my pelvis. Now I want you to pretend this was like a table, and you're going to put a glass of water on the table, and we're going to start to rock the table back and forth. So I'm going to tilt in one direction so my pubic bone and fingertips lift, and then the glass of water would spill onto my belly. And then I could tilt my pelvis the other way, which would spill the water in between my legs. And just keep going back and forth. Stay within a range that doesn't hurt. But as you're rocking your pelvis back and forth, you'll notice your low back gets flatter towards the mat and then arches off the mat. And I want you to settle into a position where your table becomes a table again and the glass of water is centered without spilling. Your pubic bone and your hip bones should be about level with each other. Everyone's going to be slightly different here, which is why I want you to have that as a reference point, but I want you to really feel your way through it. So this is like my ideal, neutral, but let's go back to flat back for a second. Your best neutral is that arch under your low back, but your ribs still maintaining contact with the mat. So I want you to slowly drop your pubic bone to feel the arch gradually come back into your back. But notice when the arch starts to come close to the ribs, and that's where I want you to freeze. So for some people, the pubic bone might still be just a touch higher than the hip bones, and as long as you're tension-free in your low back, that's fine. So now in some exercises, we try to maintain this neutral position using your oblique abdominals isometrically to keep the space between your ribs and hips. So let's try that. You're going to shift your hand hold, fingertips on your hip bones, thumbs at the bottom of your ribs, and I want you to imagine your obliques are running up and down between the ribs and hips like suspenders. So this exercise is called a knee drop. When you exhale, I want you to allow one knee to fall out to the side, and your challenge will be to keep your opposite hip still without rotating to follow the leg. And then inhale back up. Okay, so that, just keep repeating that. So the box that I created between my hips and ribs, all 4 points should stay stable as the leg moves. Now I'm gonna take my hands away for a second. You keep trying to do it right, but I'm gonna show it wrong. When my knee falls out, if my leg brings the pelvis, if I don't disassociate it, you'll see the hip starts to twist, my other leg collapses in. So that's one error. Or sometimes another error is that as the weight falls out, the leg you're not using also starts to drop out to give a counterbalance. And that's another way to get out of using your abdominals. So instead, I want you to feel the force of that exhale as the last one on the side. As that knee drops out, you're compressing, anchoring down the opposite hip to resist, and then lift back up. All right, let's try a set with the other side. So now more attention into the opposite hip as that knee falls. And you can imagine a rock sitting on that hip, and it's just getting heavier and heavier as you need it to. Inhale to lift back up. Start the breath before the movement. Exhale, feel the compression of the deep layer of the abs. And then inhale to lift. In our breathing principle, we talked about the deepest layer wrapping all around your waist like a corset. So I still want that activation of 3-dimensional compression, and that's the undershirt underneath your obliques, holding that space between the ribs and hips. Just 2 more times. Exhale, let your knee drop out. On the leg you're not using, try to feel your foot, pushing your big toe a little bit. Inhale up, and 1 more time. Exhale, letting your knee drop out, and then inhale back up. Okay, now just for another plane of challenge, now I'm gonna slide my leg down the mat in that direction. You're still gonna hand hold the same way, but now you wanna resist your pelvis tipping forward anteriorly. So you're gonna take an inhale, make this a shorter set. On your exhale, glide your foot down the mat using your breath to increase that contraction of the abs to resist the leg. Inhale back up. Let's switch legs every time. Exhale, glide your foot down the mat. So you'll feel how there's a transfer of where the effort is. Inhale back up. I have to put a little more attention in the oblique that's on the side of the sliding leg now. Inhale to lift and exhale, reach away. Inhale, back up. One more on each side. Exhale, slide out. Inhale, return. And last one, exhale. Inhale, return. While we have your hands placed here, let's talk about that imprint position. Now, neutral I said was most shock absorbent, but when we lift your legs up into the air while you're laying on your back, an imprint refers to a slight posterior tilt, which lets us shorten the obliques more than they are at their resting length. And that way they're a little stronger to stabilize against the weight of the legs going up into the air for exercises like the 100. And that shortening of your abs also disengages your low back, like they're kind of in a tug of war. And it puts your abs at an advantage so your low back muscles don't have the reflex of gripping to create stability. We want to train your body out of that habit, really. Okay, so just making the imprint. Sorry, I don't know what to do with my clothes here. Okay, so I'm going to go back to that same box. Fingers on my hip bones, thumbs at the base of my ribs. When I imprint, I'm bringing the hip bones closer to the ribs. And if you think of the suspenders again, that's the suspender shortening. Okay, so they're tightening up a little bit. And then when I go back to neutral, I'm increasing the space between the ribs and hips and allowing the curve into the back. And now my suspenders are stretching. So as you exhale, you're gonna tilt your pelvis slightly. And it's just 5-10 degrees of rocking. Nowhere near as big as the exploration we did. Inhale, rock back to neutral. I want you to see how small you can make the tilt. The smaller it is, the more you'll feel the abs, and you'll have no reason to engage other muscles like your glutes. Exhale, tilt your pelvis. Low back gets a little flatter towards the mat. Inhale, return. If you had wet cement underneath you, your low back is going towards the wet cement, but it's not pushing down and like denting into it. Imprinting. Inhale, back to neutral, even though that's the name. One more time. Exhale to imprint. Inhale, back to neutral. Okay, we'll practice holding imprint in a second, but I want to go back to a familiar exercise, which we've done in most of our classes. We've done an exercise that we've bridged with your hips. We've also done a hip roll. So we're going to put those two moves together into one exercise so you can feel the contrast of stabilizing neutral versus rolling through an imprint. So when we do a hip roll, let's do it with me. As you start the motion, we're articulating, peeling your spine off the mat. So we go through imprint on our way to curling off the mat, okay? And so that curl off's a deeper flexion than I was having you practice. And then when you roll back down, same thing, I'm coming through a flexed position. So it's like I visit imprint, and then the last thing I'll do is unravel the spine to come back to neutral. So let's try that 2 more times. On the exhale, you're gonna curl your hips towards your ribs, squeeze your glutes now to press your hips up to bridge. And then inhale at the top. On your exhale, you're gonna roll back down one bone at a time, passing through imprint, then coming to neutral. And just one more time that way, exhale as you roll off. Now when I start to lift the hips, I wanna reach the knees towards the toes. So I keep some flexion at the knees using my hamstrings. Inhale there, and then roll back down. Okay, now when I do a bridge, I'm trying to resist tilting my pelvis back, keeping it neutral and just extending the hip joint. So let's try that on a 2-breath pattern. When you exhale, you're gonna push your hips right up and it just opens the front of the joint. And then inhale, you're gonna lower back down. Exhale, you're gonna press up to your bridge. Inhale, you're gonna lower, landing gently, but right onto the sacrum. One more time, exhale, pushing up. Inhale, down. So in that case, like I kept tone in my abdominals and the natural curve under my low back, and I just moved like a board. Let's hybrid those. So now you're gonna bridge on the way up. Exhale, make your tone, push your hips straight up to bridge. Inhale into your back and roll on the way down. Okay, so bridge up, hip roll down. Exhale, squeeze your glutes, push up to bridge. Inhale into your back to roll down. One more time, exhale, bridge up. Inhale, roll down. All right, you know we gotta reverse it for 3. Good hamstring workout today. On your exhale, roll your hips off the mat. Come into that long line, shoulders to knees, and then inhale, drop those hips straight down. Exhale, curl through imprint, roll up, put a little weight into those big toes. Inhale, drop it straight down. One more time, roll your way up. Find that tone, stay connected into your abs, drop your hips back down. All right, last thing I want to work on for the workout today is practice holding imprint. So if you can rock into that imprint one more time, you're going to take an exhale as you tilt your pelvis, find the shortening of the obliques, and just try to sustain that. So just hold it and inhale into your back so we can keep that connection. Every time you exhale, I want you to feel a little more intensity here. Just check in that you still have that imprint. Inhale into your back, and then exhale, just gently compress and reinforce. All right, I'm going to take you right into some toe taps here. So on the inhale, lift one leg into tabletop. Now start to exhale first, deepen your imprint and bring up your second leg, hover them in the air. You're gonna hold for an inhale. Then when you exhale, you're gonna lower one foot, tapping your toes towards the mat. They can hit, but they don't have to. Inhale to lift your leg. So alternate legs. As the leg drops, you're gonna have to use that exhale to deepen the connection to your imprint. Inhale, lift back up. Exhale, so it's very alive. Even though I'm talking about staying still, the intensity changes quite a bit during the range of motion. So I start that exhale, and towards the end of the breath, I'm going deeper and deeper into that abdominal contraction. Inhale up. One more on each side. Exhale, tap down. Inhale to lift. Exhale, tap down. And inhale back up. Great, you can tuck your knees into your chest. Release your legs back down. All right, daily exploration is done.